Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the WMCA's special event to celebrate some of the outstanding women of the West Midlands as we move to International Women's Day on Monday. Now, our theme this year is Choose to Challenge, and it's all about the choice that we all have. We can choose to challenge and call out any gender bias and inequality that we see, or we can choose to celebrate and seek out the very best achievements, and we can all choose what we do to create a more inclusive and balanced world. This evening, you're going to hear from each of the panelists about their own story. I'm going to pose a few questions and particularly try to draw out this question of what challenges have they faced and overcome, and indeed do they still see. So some of the highlights, we're going to hear from Dr. Beverley Lindsay about her role as a businesswoman and former Vice Lord Lieutenant. We're going to hear from Professor Kieran Trahan and Anita Bala about the West Midlands Leadership Commission. And we're going to hear from lots of people who really got to the top of their own chosen part of life in the West Midlands. In between hearing from the panelists, we'll have videos from different women from across the region talking about how they feel about the challenges facing them, and particularly about the current climate and challenges. And then this lovely question, what advice would you give to your younger self, or indeed to other women aspiring through the region at the moment? And during the event, you're very welcome to post questions. I've nudged everyone to try to keep on time, and I will try to do that as well in my unusual role as compere. So please post a question in the chat, or if you want, you can just put your green hand up as we do at the regional press briefings, and then I'll call upon you when we get to that point. So there we are. And I think that's all I need to say by way of introduction. We're going to start off, get straight into it with our first video. And our video is of Carmen Watson, who's Pertemps Chair and Managing Director. So let's hope, the fingers crossed, hope the tech works, and let's hear from Carmen straight away.
Hello, my name is Carmen Watson and I'm Chair of Pertemps. We're one of the largest providers of staffing solutions in the UK, with over 200 branches up and down the country. I've had my fair share of barriers to overcome in order to be taken seriously and to build a successful career. I was brought up in an era where you would go to a meeting in your high heel platform shoes, sporting the latest briefcase, to have a senior level meeting, and usually it was held by men. So my first challenge was to have them take me seriously. I had to be credible, I had to be a subject matter expert, and that was just to get their attention. Thankfully, things have changed. The high heels have gone. You don't necessarily need the briefcase now in this digital age. But it is becoming more evident that businesses are advancing for women, and there's a continued importance to promote gender diversity within society. As a country, we need to create more female role models and support women within business now, even more than ever. Women have been affected particularly hard due to the pandemic, but it's imperative that women know that they can progress, they can receive fair treatment throughout their career, whatever the circumstances. Being a woman in business can be a tough road to travel. Gender roles and unconscious bias are still very much embedded in our society. But remember, take charge of your career, plan your strategy and choose carefully. Speak up when needed and don't fit in. I choose to challenge.
That's really lovely, Carmen. I choose to challenge. That's perhaps the drill of tonight, that simple phrase. Thank you very much. And I love the clue in that, don't fit in. That's great advice. So Carmen, thank you for going first. So next we come to our first interview. And that, I'm pleased to say, is with the Managing Director of a company called Drill, Julie White. In the last 13 years, Julie has become a leading figure in, as we're going to hear about, a very male-dominated sector, growing Drill and setting up many other businesses, investing in training and growing apprenticeships and sitting on lots of boards. So, Julie, just first of all, not on the script list, but tell us what deed drill is, because we've done this assuming everyone will know, so you should tell us what it is.
Yeah, we do concrete cutting and sawing and controlled demolition for the construction industry. So I'll do something as simple as drill you a hole for a plumber's pipe, or cut you a motorway bridge down. So very diverse, and work for every sector in the construction and civil industries.
Wow, incredible. And so the story is, I think I've got the notes here, but why don't you tell the story about what you did in 2008?
Well, I think it starts before then. I actually think I was, I always knew, I was very lucky, I knew I was going to come into construction. I was actually born into it. It gave the best time of my childhood, anything to do with construction. So I knew I'd start my first construction company when I was in my younger 20s. And then what I did in 2008, I actually went and bought the family business out. So that's the concrete cutting side of it. So I got hold of it within 5 months of owning it. I had the first recession in 2008 hit, and I lost 40% of my turnover. So it was a bit of a roller coaster ride, Andy. But I trained everyone, I brought more apprentices on, I put myself through the apprenticeship scheme so I knew what I was talking about, modernised the company because the company had been going over 50 years, and really just got my head down and just really got to know the company and got to know the people in it, because that's what matters, the people are in it.
Brilliant. And I might have this wrong the next thing I say, but I suspect this sector was a rather male-dominated sector back in 2008.
Yes.
And you've
well,
actually Go on.
Sorry, I was very used to. I've been in this industry now, the construction industry, for over 30 years. And when I first started my very first company doing a very specialised technology for the construction industry, everyone always thought you were the secretary when you went on site, and they were always wanting me to take the notes during the site in the site hut, or they never knew where the women's toilet key was. So those days are well gone, and now it's quite, you've seen so much more women on site, and it's just an amazing industry for everyone to get into.
Good. And you're being very modest, because I think you've actually grown your business into the biggest network of concrete cutting sites across the country, if I've understood it correctly.
That's correct, that's right. We have got 10 offices around the country. We're usually doing around about 400 to 500 jobs a month for probably around about an £8,000 customer base. And so we go in, it's very hardcore, sorry, excuse the pun, but we usually go in and deliver what they need at the construction industry. So it's very unusual for a woman to be in this kind of business.
So the obvious question that comes out of that, to the theme of tonight about defying challenges, is what advice would you give about breaking down the barriers that could have held you back, but no, you literally broke through them?
You've got to actually love what you do, which is, I suppose, all us women we always do that. We go in with everything with passion. You also got to just stand tall and just, as Carmen said, be heard. Don't be, role models are great, but they're not you. Also don't be worried to ask questions. Stand up and be heard. Show that what you know. And also use your women. Us women have got so much great. We have great ways of feeling how people are, how the industry are. We've got a great way of knowing what's going on. So use it, and use it to your best challenge. And for young people, the construction industry is an amazing business industry to get into, because you can do everything from working in procurement to working in HR to working in architecture, into quantity surveyor, and even a specialist trades like me. So Andy, as you can see, the construction industry has changed the centre of Birmingham for the best, and it's an amazing, and when you see it and you actually can be part of that, it's an amazing feeling.
Just tell us some of the big sites you've been working on in the Midlands then, that sort of proprietorial feel you've got. Yes,
I have. We're doing a lot of the HS2, especially in the centre of Birmingham and Snow Hill. We also did the Birmingham Library and all the Broad Street to the centre connection. So and also the near the council house, we did all the work around that section. So yeah, so we been very, Birmingham is a very pivotal point for all the industry at the moment.
Brilliant. So you want me to make sure there are a few more jobs like that coming down the line then, really?
Definitely,
okay.
Definitely, please.
Lovely.
All right.
And the question that there'll be a sort of derivation of this for everybody about if you were your young self now, or advising your young self, or advising others young women coming into construction, what would you say to them?
Wow, that's a hard one, and I've thought very hard about this. I mean, I wrote a few things. I said, stop doubting yourself. That's definitely a woman trade. Work hard, which we're very good at that, and also make it happen. If you can see it, if you can visualize it, and make it happen, and make the people around you understand how it could work and how you can make it happen. And also, I mean, I always say the best way to predict the future is to make it happen. So that's how I would say. I would say to myself, stop doubting, and you can do this.
That sounds like a politician's mantra to not talk about the future, but you should go into that maybe in the future.
Yeah, create it, Andy. That's the only way to make the future. Create it.
That's incredibly good way to start off our interviews. Thank you, Julie, very much for spending a bit of time with us and telling your story.
I better do it. I choose to challenge.
That's lovely indeed. Thank you very much, Julie, for going first. Right then, and telling your wonderful story of your business. Okay, next then, we go to a different sector, but to equally great success. And I suspect lots of people on the line know our next interviewee, and it's to introduce Dr. Beverley Lindsay. Now, Dr. Lindsay, of course, is probably known to many people as the recently ex is the way she describes it to me, the ex Deputy Lord Lieutenant, so an incredible distinguished role that Beverley's had. But of course, her really dramatic career started off in 1987 when she established Diamond Travel, and it's become an incredibly successful business. But there's that to talk about, but there's also the Lord Lieutenancy to talk about. As Vice Lord Lieutenant, she was indeed the first female in 500 years to hold this role. So a brilliant story of breaking the glass ceiling in front of us. So Beverley, lots of people watching this, contrary to what I've just said, might not know about the lieutenancy. So just tell us what it's all about and how you were appointed to the role.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Andy. Thank you very much. Well, Lord Lieutenants were first appointed to a number of English counties by King Henry VIII about 500 years ago. At that time, the main duties were to put down wars with their militias, in other words, to protect the king at that time. The Lord Lieutenants are the British monarch's main representative in each county. Likewise, the Vice Lord Lieutenant, when the Lord Lieutenant is not available. There are also several Deputy Lieutenants in the counties. Of course, today, in today's world, we're not putting down wars with militias, and can you imagine me having a militia? So the duties entails welcoming the members of the royal family when they visit the region, promoting civic honors such as the British Empire Medal, the Queen's Award for Voluntary Service, the Queen's Award for Enterprise, officiating at citizenship ceremonies and various community events. I was, deeply honored that first in 2013, I was appointed as a Deputy Lieutenant by the former Lord Lieutenant Paul Sabafi. And, then in 2017, I was honored, shocked and everything when I was asked by the now Lord Lieutenant John Crabtree to become Vice Lord Lieutenant. It was very daunting for me at that time. Can you imagine me, a Jamaican single mother from Handsworth? I I felt it was very daunting, but I soon grew into the role and start I start accepting the role and growing into it, and it was indeed an honor to have met so many people. It was a life, I'd say, it's educational journey, a life enhancing experience. I've been able to engage with so many people, especially the people in the community, learning about the different faiths and the different culture. There's so many wonderful people around that I would never have met if I'd not gone into that role.
Thank you. And the obvious question to ask, given you were the first woman to take this role that, as you said, went right back to Henry VIII's time, and you described what you had to do, but how did you have a sense of responsibility, extra sense, because you were a woman, or was that completely not part of the way you thought about it?
Well, not only just that I was a woman of culture, a woman, but I'm a woman from a different culture. I'm a Black woman, and I think whatever I did, how I carried out the role and conducted myself was very important for the people from my background coming up. So I think I had to try to toe the line as best as possible. Because I had two things, I'm a woman and I'm a Black woman. And at first, I think it took people a little while to get used to a woman, a female Vice Lord Lieutenant, never mind a Black female Vice Lord Lieutenant. So there were a few challenges, in the early days, but I soon overcome that, because as the theme today, choose to challenge. So I had to challenge myself and maybe others, to stay in the role. And I'm so happy. I think I got through the 3 years of my tenure without causing any unrest or embarrassment.
Oh, Beverley, you're being modest. You did more than get through. You did it with great style and aplomb, actually, and you should be very proud. But there's a very interesting point you made there, because when I introduced the choose to challenge piece, I didn't pick out what you've just said, which is you have to challenge yourself. And by the way, that applies whether you're male or female. Perhaps as the only chap who's going to talk today, I can say it's exactly the same for men. Still the same underlying thing. Some might say on the call it's a lot easier for men, but that notion of every individual has to challenge themselves to be the best they can be is absolutely spot on. So it's another angle of the theme for today. But Beverley, you did do it with great style. So the question I will ask you, as I'm asking everybody, is your advice to a young Beverley Lindsay, perhaps setting up your business back in 1987, what would it be?
My advice is to have more confidence in myself. I think all my life, and even now, maybe I suffer from that imposter syndrome. And I maybe didn't push myself as much because I think people had more confidence in me than I have for myself. So that's one of the advice I would give to my younger self. And maybe to learn to listen more. When I was younger, maybe I didn't listen enough. So and another thing, I've really had some challenges in business because I was too trusting. So maybe not to be as trusting as I've been all my life.
It's a lovely characteristic, though, you're trusting of other people. So that concept of confidence, I have a feeling we shall come to that a few times during the evening. So just one last question for you to push you just that little bit further, which is my brief tonight. How do you build confidence in young people? When you say you should be more confident, anything you look back and think that would have helped me gain more confidence?
Yes, it's believing in yourself, believing that you can do things, because, most times like even this role, I didn't believe that I could do it. But if I'm given the role, then I'll challenge myself and I'll do it. So I don't put myself forward enough for things because I don't believe in myself. But if I'm given the role, I will carry it out. So I think the first thing is to really self-belief and aim high. in life. And sometimes I say to young people too, in life you have to be almost tunnel vision, because sometimes if you listen to what people are saying, there are a lot of doubters out there that will tell you you can't. I've been told that all my life from as a child, you'll never become anything, you'll never amount to anything. So you have to kind of not listen and believe in yourself and aim high and work hard. You have to work hard, to be successful. You have to work hard. I have a memory gem when I was a child. They say heights by great men reach and kept was not attained by sudden flight, but they who while the companions slept were toiling upward through the night. And if you want to be successful, you have to be prepared to toil upward through the night.
That's so true. Beverley, thank you for sharing your experience and advice. And I'm sure I speak for everyone on the call to say thank you for what you did to be the first black woman, to take that incredibly prestigious role and do it with such incredible aplomb. So thank you for what you do. No one else can be the first now. So congratulations to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As I say, I consider myself as a key to a door. So I hope I've opened it for other people, so people to follow through.
For other people. That's also the spirit of this evening's conversation.
So
thank you for the trust. That's exactly. Excellent. Next then, we're going to see another video from another sector, another great leader who is I'm privileged to know, and that's Eileen Schofield, who is the senior solicitor at Schofield and Associates. So let's run Eileen's video.
Hello, my name's Eileen Schofield. I'm a solicitor with a law firm called Schofield and Associates. I am super impressed by all the women that I meet on a day-by-day basis, and particularly now, women have huge challenges balancing their work responsibilities, homeschooling, working from home and keeping a family going. So I really take my hat off and applaud all the women that are keeping the country together, actually. And, I've been influenced throughout my life by a whole host of women at every stage in my life. But I would come back to a school friend who's influenced me throughout my life. Her commitment, dedication, and her sheer grit has really been a beacon for me to observe from the distance and support. And for my younger self, what would I say to my younger self? Well, I would say to be happy, be confident at what you're doing whenever you're doing it. If you're doing it for the right reasons, then just push yourself hard, go for it, be true to yourself, and don't let anybody dictate to you what you want to achieve. And really just have a really special International Women's Day. And I choose to challenge. Hello.
Thank you very much, Eileen. Now then, you introduced a subject that I think I'm going to ask a few people about as we go through the evening, and that's whether, as you said, it's the women who are keeping the country together under the challenge of COVID. So we might come back to that theme, but Eileen, thank you for telling your story. Next then, we're going to the armed services, and I need to introduce our next two panelists. And I need to read this to get it exactly right, and you'll see why in just a moment. There is a duo. First of all, Lieutenant Commander Suzanne Lynch, who is from the Royal Naval Reserves, and secondly, Captain. I have to get all the ranks right. You see, that's one reason I had to read. Captain Samantha Lucas-Floyd. Although it says on the screen, Major Samantha Lucas-Floyd. So one of the things is wrong on my paper or on the screen. You can tell us. Who is the Regimental Administration Officer, 159 Regiment, Royal Logistics Corps. So go on, just tell us first, Samantha, is it the screen that's right or my paper that's right?
The screen's correct. I'm a major now. Yeah.
Well, congratulations if you've had another promotion since we wrote this, then that's brilliant. Anyway, the obvious question for both of you is you've chosen life in the armed services. So obviously, what made you choose this career is the first question before we get into a bit about what you've encountered, how you've done. So let's hear from both of you, and we will start off with Suzanne.
Good afternoon, Andy. I chose to be in the armed forces because my father served in the Royal Navy, So as a child, I grew up listening to stories about his exciting career, the ports he'd visited, the adventures he'd had all around the globe. So at a really early age, I knew that I wanted a life in the Royal Navy.
You were very sure right from the start that you were going to do this. So that's brilliant. And I'll come to your experiences in just a bit. But let's turn to Samantha. Were you sure from the start or not?
I was probably the complete opposite in the sense I had no family ties to the military whatsoever. I just found myself on the path of academia that everyone expects you to partake in, and I didn't enjoy it. I didn't get any passion from it. So I saw a recruiter. He sold me the dream of traveling the world, and when I looked at it, it ticked every box. I was quite an outdoorsy person, quite an active individual, and the army would afford me the opportunity to travel the world and have these amazing experiences, which I have had.
And has that come true then, the traveling the world piece?
Yep, some great places, some perhaps not so great places, but yeah, I can definitely tick off a few more places on the map.
Brilliant. Now we'll come to look in more detail about your experience in just a minute, but let's come to Suzanne then. So I know that you've served in over 40 countries, incredible, and you've had time on HMS illustrious aircraft carrier. So the question is, what's your treatment been like, both within the forces and particularly in some of those countries you visited, because they maybe are not all as enlightened as the UK. So where have you had to confront barriers?
Okay, thanks, Andy. That's a really interesting question. So I joined the Navy over 30 years ago. So when I joined the Navy, I joined as a Wren. I joined the Women's Royal Naval Service, which was a completely separate service to our male service, and we didn't go to sea. And I was delighted in 1993 when we were amalgamated into the Royal Navy. So there was no jobs, no barriers to me set by my gender. And since then, I've had the opportunity to serve at sea, on land, and ashore and support helicopter squadrons. And throughout my time in the Royal Navy, I've always been treated with respect. I've been supported by colleagues, male and female, to achieve my potential. And again, I've been treated equally to achieve. So it's that mutual support where you are treated and they want your talents to flourish. Working all around the world, you come up with different cultures and you're faced with different sort of scenarios. So in my last operational role, I was in Djibouti on the Horn of Africa working for the United Nations Task Force. And again, I was in charge of a team of 10 male ratings, and some of the officers in Djibouti found it quite funny that a female could be in charge. But after they got to know me and we broke down barriers, they could see how professional we are. And then I was just accepted and always have been treated with the utmost respect by whoever I work with. So I would say that I've been really blessed within my career and blessed to have supportive colleagues and role models that support you to achieve your potential. And I have faced no barriers because of my gender.
It's a brilliant thing to hear from our services, that fantastic story. So Samantha, you too have served in a number of countries around the world, but one I particularly want to pull out, Afghanistan. Now, Afghanistan is world famous for it's the very opposite of an equal society. So was that a difficult tour for a woman to go on in a leadership role? How did you find that?
So I was deployed as the Regimental Administration Officer of the UK Med Group, and they were based out of Cambastion Role 3 Hospital. Because of what a lot of the clinicians were doing out there, the ratio between men and women, I'd say, was actually more in favour of the women. There was a lot of doctors, nurses, radiologists. So in terms of how many females there were out there, it was actually, I'd say, more females. But I think it brings into question the key point of females on the front line and whether females are actually ever going to live up to their male counterparts. And I think it's interesting because whilst I was out in Afghan, you see females on the front line, and this was before they were allowed in close combat roles, because they were already on the front line with their male counterparts as translators, as female searchers, as logisticians, medics. So that was really interesting for me to see firsthand in an operational environment just how ingrained females are right the way through the spectrum of conflict.
Excellent. And did you have much direct involvement with the country that you were serving, frankly, in terms of serving the citizens of Afghanistan, or was it a very separate life in the compound to the rest of the country?
It was very separate. Yeah, we really only dealt with the local interpreters or local nationals that were supporting the UK and US forces there. I didn't personally go out on the ground, so I didn't get to see many of the locals, but I had friends who did. And as I said, I think it's very important to recognise those that were out on the ground in those roles that I mentioned previously, and they're the ones that, you know, did a lot of the work whilst I was sitting in my air-conditioned office back in the role-free hospital.
And this question may be out of order, but I'm interested in it in terms of the psychology of someone serving in the Afghan front line. Was part of your motivation that you were fighting against a regime in Afghanistan that you knew had pretty much no respect for women's rights, or was that not actually part of the thing, and your job is to serve the British Armed Forces almost whatever they ask you to do?
I think I have to take the party line of the second one. Obviously, that's my role and responsibility as an officer in the British Army. I'm going to go where the politicians and the government tell me to go. But yes, there was an element of the regime out there that didn't sit right with me, not just as a female and part of the LGBT community as well. So that was also something that it didn't sit right with me. So it was one of my motivations to join the army was always that I wanted to deploy, and I don't think I would have been happy leaving the army without that opportunity to represent my country on a deployment.
Really interesting. That's obviously why you've just won a promotion. A perfect answer from my slightly provocative question. There we go. Let's go back to Suzanne. So same as I've asked others, if you were now 30 years ago, you said you went into the armed forces. I would not have realised that. So if you were advising the young Suzanne, what would you say?
Well, I've had a fantastic career, so I would do it all again in a heartbeat. But with the knowledge I had, I would just say, like a lot of the other panelists have said, believe in yourself. I think that sometimes that you can think that you're not good enough. I mean, I forgot to mention that when we first went to sea, I felt that I had to be better than my male counterparts. So we strove to be better and to overachieve rather than being happy being ourselves. So having that confidence in yourself, having that self-belief, but being kind to yourself, because I think we are our harshest critics, and sometimes our inner voice can be quite brutal with us. So I sometimes think that you need to be kind to yourself and maybe give yourself the internal advice that you would give to a friend. Again, I think for me, don't surround myself with negativity within my career. Be a cheerleader for other females, for other sailors, to allow them to achieve their potential, and just work in that really positive, nurturing environment that allows everyone to achieve their potential.
Can I ask you a question that's not in any way scripted? I've gone off the script lots already, but are you encouraged to do mentoring for young recruits within the service, Suzanne? And you do?
Yes, so we actively get involved in mentoring, and that's something we're all really passionate about, to developing the youngsters, to give them those skills and that self-belief, and it's really rewarding to see. But also, by being a mentor, you get so much from the person you're mentoring. So again, it's one of those things that works in both ways, and it's really insightful and it's really powerful. And we do a lot of mentoring throughout the armed forces, and we have a lot of role models that we can rely on. So sometimes, as Samantha said, that we're still slightly underrepresented in certain areas, but by having role models and networks, we strive to address those balances.
Brilliant. Thank you for sharing that experience then, Suzanne. And then next, let's finish off with Samantha. Same question to you. If you were advising the young recruit, what would you say?
So I joined in 2006 as a 18-year-old-ish, and I think the common theme that you'll hear most of tonight is definitely confidence in your own abilities, confidence in those around you. For me, I went in as a soldier and then I went through the ranks to commission. So that for me was the point in my life, at the point in my career where I started to believe in myself. And I think that that's a really powerful thing. When you learn to actually accept just what you can do, then there's no stopping you, so to speak. The second point is utilising the networks. So I was in the regular army. When I left, I joined an ex-regular network on Facebook, and it's been phenomenal, not just for any work-related issues, but across the whole spectrum of industries, because they're all represented. And I think that would be something that I think we should utilise at an early stage. We should utilise our peers, we should utilise people we go to school with, and just share best practice, or just, as Suzanne said, having that ability to speak to other people and listen as well, and understand that we don't have to necessarily be the best at everything, but just bouncing ideas off someone who isn't necessarily in your chain of command or would have a detrimental effect on your career. I think the third point, if I may, would definitely be not to have that extra slice of cake, because it definitely takes longer to burn off the older you get.
Good piece of advice. That's so true. Anyway, can I thank you both for what you've done in service, and also for your individual leadership roles and sharing them with us tonight. Thank you very much indeed. Now then, I'm getting lots of questions come in, which I will try to get to. So I hope everyone will still be on the line at the end with questions. But as we're running nicely ahead, we're going to carry on with the pace. So then, the next thing we're going to do is to hear from two very inspirational young women. The first is Rima Tadmory, Creative Director and Designer at Rima Tadmory Limited. And the second is Adebayo, who is Chief Executive at the Niyo enterprise. So I think we're going to start with Rima. And what I've got down as a very brief synopsis of your story is that you graduated with BCU with a degree in fashion design, and like so many graduates, found it hard to find work. But you went along to the job centre and you advised to apply to the Prince's Trust. The rest, as they say, is history. So Rima, why don't you tell us your story?
Good afternoon, Andy. I hope you're well. Well, I'm going to try and keep it as brief and short as possible, although I'm very much known for rambling on quite a bit. So yes, as you said, when I graduated university, like a lot of university students, you tend to just assume that you're going to land yourself in a job, which obviously wasn't the case. And I did end up at the job centre. So for me, after I got introduced to the Prince's Trust, it really opened up a lot of gates in terms of being able to be allocated a mentor. I actually ended up on a course which was called the Prince's Trust Enterprise course, which is pretty much like a 4-day fast track into business. And then from there, I got put in front of a Dragon's Den style panel where I pitched my business, and I received a loan shortly after and allocated a mentor. And then from there, I pretty much started my business, which is here today still.
Lovely. And I'm going to take a question that's come in straight away before we get to other stuff for you, Rima. It simply says, I can't actually see who's asked it. It simply says, how much has business suffered during COVID? And are you still able to do your designing work during COVID? Is the demand there?
Mm-hmm. Well, being a part of the wedding industry, obviously this last year has been affected quite greatly. Obviously there's autumn in terms of all kinds of events, especially weddings. Unfortunately, a lot of people haven't been able to go through, and those that have been limited in numbers. So for me especially, because I specialise in bespoke bridal wear, the events that I tend to be a part of are essentially the larger scale weddings. So for me, it has definitely been affected, but I've been very blessed in the sense that the government have been able to come forward and help my business pretty much stay afloat up until this point. And I'm super excited to hopefully get back to normal come the summer.
And the question that's obvious here, and the sort of theme of breaking down barriers, choosing to challenge, is obviously, so what so far then, Rima, is the biggest challenge that you've had to cut through?
Try to keep the momentum going. As well, going from being constantly day in, day out, being involved with clients and being at work, to have been taken out of that environment and almost feel like there's nothing going on. I mean, the silence in the background of just sitting and waiting to see what comes next in terms of obviously the current climate and the situation and how we're going to bounce back into business again has been very difficult for me. I mean, I'm not used to sitting still. I'm constantly on the go. So for me, that's been the biggest challenge.
Excellent. And there's another question coming for you, Rima. Obviously, you've been pressed, and I can just see who's asking this. Mudassar Yassin. And Mudassar asks, so this all seems so self-confident, as we talked about earlier on. Where do you find that inspiration from?
Sorry, what was that, Andy?
So I'd say the question comes is, because you seem so confident, certain, relaxed about it all. So where does that sort of inspiration to have begun this journey all come from? Where was the starting point, the spark, you might say?
Well, to be honest, it's constantly, ever since a young age, I've always had a dream. I wouldn't say to live a fairy tale, because I very much know that living a fairy tale doesn't exist these days, but if I can just give a little bit back to all those brides to be, for me, that's where my true inspiration comes from. And at the same time, I grew up with a grandmother, may God bless her soul. She'd sit there sewing and I'd watch her from a very young age. So for me, the passion was constantly there, but I wouldn't say that I've always been confident. And I feel like my mentors at the Princess Trust, and also another mentor who I kindly had, Auntie Kathleen, really gave me that boost of confidence to take me from where I was after I left university to bring me to where I am today. I did have a lot of fear going into this, so it hasn't always been easy, and even now I still struggle with confidence a lot, but it's very important to take each day as it comes and almost take everything in a bite-sized amount so that you can pretty much, what I'm trying to say is, I think confidence comes, but you just have to remind yourself. There you go, there's my confidence out the window.
That's it. That's lovely inspiration. And I think we need to do, I've been ticked off for not doing this with Suzanne and Samantha. So we need to do the pledge, don't we? I choose to challenge. That's right, Rima. Lovely. Okay, that's brilliant. So thank you, Rima, for telling your story. And there'll be some more questions for you, I'm sure, at the end. So let's go to Oyin now. Now, I know that Oyin runs what I would call as actually quite a complex business, but its basic purpose is to empower Black women. So Oyin, do you want to explain a bit more about what your business actually does?
Yes, so my business is Niyo Enterprise, and what we do is that we use tech and beauty to economically empower Black women. So we do that through training Black women to become tech professionals, and also training Black women to become hair and beauty specialists as well.
Excellent. So you make that sound so sort of matter of fact, but it's actually quite unusual, isn't it? So where did the same question I asked Rima, where did the spark for setting that very original idea up come from?
Yeah, so it started off with me. My background is an economist. I'm an economist. So it started off with me just kind of looking at the World Economic Forum and looking at by 2030, certain jobs will be eliminated. And a lot of Black women were in those jobs. So I really didn't want to kind of see that happen, and I really wanted to make a change with that. So I decided, you know what, I need to put myself up for this challenge. And yeah, I guess I chose the challenge that, and essentially upskill Black women so that we can be included in the workforce. Yeah.
Excellent. And tell us a little bit about the Black Code Her project, because I came across this on a call we did, I don't know, about 3 months ago, and I was incredibly impressed with this. So please tell us about that.
So the Black Coder Bootcamp is actually one of the boot camps under our organization, Niyo Network. And essentially it exists to upskill Black women to become full stack software developers. So women who are maybe unemployed or employed in low skill employment can actually train themselves and actually get jobs in some of our partner organizations like Citibank, like KPMG, and the lot. So that is basically the Black Coder Bootcamp. So it's exciting. We literally just finished training 50 women, and a lot of them are already starting to get jobs. One person got a job yesterday in a robotics AI company, which is a dream to me, because just that Black women can be involved in the process is just amazing.
Was that a local company here? The robotics company?
Yes, I believe in it. Fine, yeah.
Wonderful. So there's two slightly different questions that come from that. The 50 women who you are working with are obviously very, in a sense, lucky that they get that break with you. They've also, I'm sure, worked very hard to get the break. But the question then comes, how do you feel about those who don't even know that this opportunity is there? What do we need to do to make sure more people are actually aspiring to come and work with you, and more women are coming work with you?
I think it's just about sharing the stories of women that are already doing the, taking part in the program. Also ensuring that what we're doing is being amplified even further so that more people can actually know about it, because a lot of people are probably struggling due to the coronavirus. Certain jobs, I don't know if you guys watched the documentary last night on BBC about how COVID has affected a lot of minorities. So a lot of Black people are in the front line and actually are wanting to go into like managerial jobs or jobs in tech. So just being able to be more visible in that space, essentially. My dream is to do a documentary about this. So yeah.
Yeah, I think we'd all look forward to that documentary. And so a bit of feedback for you straight away. Debbie Cinder has put a note in and is testing my eyesight to read this on the screen. I think it says, Oyin, I hope you've entered for the Midlands Women in Tech Awards. You are a great inspiration to us. And then, yes, then this is interesting. But to say, also asks to you, how would you encourage women from the BAME community to come out of their comfort zone and contribute to the professional services industry?
So the way we do that is actually, even through our boot camps, we encourage Black women through our empowerment day. So we obviously do the core hard skill training, but we do a lot of skills, soft skill training to encourage Black women to be more confident, essentially.
Thank you. And last question I want to ask you, which is also prompted by the chat coming in. It simply says, what's your next challenge? And then where's this business going to be in 10 years time? Because you've come so far. What's next?
The next challenge is actually we're launching our Black Disruptor Accelerator Bootcamp for people, for Black women who want to get into gaming, for Black women who want to become tech founders. So essentially, we really want to build that ecosystem beyond software developers. So keep an eye out. I will be sharing some information about that on my social media pages.
It is incredible story what you've done, and I don't think you can see the chat coming in, so I'll read it out, and I won't get the intonation of this right at all. It comes from Maxine Douglas, and it simply says, Oyin and Rima, simply go girls. So there we are. And if you want to take the pledge,
I choose to challenge.
Brilliant. Thank you both for sharing your experiences with us. That's really, really brilliant. Okay. Right now then, let's have a little look. We go next to another leader who I've seen do her stuff over the last few years. And it's my pleasure now to introduce Jenny Loynton, Director of Loynton & Co. Solicitors. And it says in my brief, and I knew this, Jenny was born in Malaysia and she came to the UK in 1980, founded Loynton & Co. Solicitors in 2001 before becoming the largest Chinese law firm in the West Midlands. So a brilliant success story. So Jenny, I think you're going to tell us the story of coming to the UK, setting this up and the brilliant growth. So let's hear it.
Well, thank you, Andy, and good evening, all. Like many of the other panelists, I also have many roles. I'm a wife, a lawyer, deputy lieutenant for the West Midlands, and more importantly, a mother, or rather, a tiger mum to my children. To chart my journey, one must ask how a baby born to a mother who died giving birth to her, abandoned to Buddhist monks, and eating only once a day for food begged by those monks, and being educated by Irish nuns from the convent, got here. So on this very special day, I want to thank that 36-year-old lady, mother, who died after giving birth, not knowing what will become of her child. The infant grew up with 4 siblings, with monks who instilled in her this life skill of survival, humanity, and respect. And the nuns from the convent taught her how to read and write. At the age of 11, she knew that the way out of poverty was through education. And armed with an academic scholarship, she excelled at school. And at the age of 17, whilst waiting for her GCSE result, she didn't realize that in granting a favor to her English brother-in-law to care for a very sick mother, that it would take her across the waters to become the owner of one of the largest Chinese law firms in the West Midlands. At the age of 24, a chance meeting with one of the wealthiest supermarket owner, a Chinese man called Mr. Wingip, she was challenged to open a Chinese law firm at the back of a warehouse. With no knowledge of Cantonese language at all, she took the challenge, and within 1 year, she mastered the Cantonese language and became one of the youngest equity partner. I have been asked many times, how do I deal with rich Chinese male chauvinistic client? And I would always say to them, I look them in the eye and I say, trust me, I will do my very best for you. And, I always remember quietly, I would be thinking, oh, well, they will be taking advice from a female. So, I've also been asked about the color of my skin, being a brown lady. But you know one thing, children do not see color. And I know this because one day I picked my 4-year-old up from school, and I could hear the teacher saying to my daughter, Lucia, your nanny is here. I'm sure what crossed the teacher's mind was, oh, she's brown. She looks Filipino or Indonesian. She must be a maid to this white child. And I was so honored when my daughter turned around and said, that's not my nanny, that's my mummy. And I'm so proud to be the mother of that child. And as a woman, we are mothers of future generation. And it's only time that my children and future generation will not see color. So I too choose the challenge.
Jenny, that's incredible. Thank you. And I think the best I can do is just read, first of all, a comment from Salma Hamid, which I hope you won't, well, no, you'll love, but I hope it won't be upsetting to you just to say your mother would be incredibly proud of you if she could see how you've told that story. So that's a lovely comment. And Salma, thank you for putting that in. And then actually another Selma rather than Salma has just said, you're an inspiration to us all, Jenny. So thank you. But the question I want to ask you is, on the basis of that incredible life story, incredible success, I don't need to ask you about overcoming barriers, because I think you've had more than your fair share of barriers. What advice are you giving to your daughter about how you hope that she will be able to build on what must be a wonderful start in life, having your wisdom? So what are you sharing?
Well, my children will never understand what is it like to be hungry. My children will never understand how ashamed I was to queue up for bread at school. But I hope that the education, the private education that I spend on them will get them to be a person who will always show respect, humility, and try to give something back, that they shouldn't think that should just take because they're so privileged. Because I spent my entire life giving them the things that I didn't have. So I always tell them, always be humble and be respectful.
And do you think that humility, if that's your advice, is an important quality for leaders?
Extremely important. And I have 2 daughters, and I always tell them, don't forget that women may break glass ceilings, but at the end of the day, we must understand that we must be humble and we must show the feminine side of ourselves. Don't try to just smash the man, get the best results and so on. We must always be feminine in the way we handle ourselves, the way we carry, we smile. You know, a smile doesn't cost anything. And I just feel that, and always remember to say sorry. If you didn't get it right, don't be embarrassed to say sorry.
That's right. Jenny, thank you. You've already done the choose to challenge. You've demonstrated
I choose the challenge.
Again, and you've
Thank
demonstrated
you,
it in space.
I hope that you will win the next election and be our mayor again.
Well, that's very sweet of you to say, but we're not having an election
for you
tonight. Thank you. You'll get me in trouble. Thank you very much, Jenny. That's really wonderful. And I'm sure Maxine's just put such words of wisdom. Thank you. So everyone's enjoyed hearing that from Jenny. Thank you so much, Jenny. Right. Next then, we're going to hear another video. And the next video is from Manjit Kang, who is the Real Estate Finance Manager, Diversity Ambassador and co-chair of the SEEK Network for RBS Bank in Birmingham. So over to Manjit.
My name is Manjit Kang. I'm a Diversity Ambassador at NatWest Bank. In the current climate, being a woman and balancing personal and professional priorities has been difficult for me. However, each day I choose to challenge by helping our customers, colleagues and communities to thrive and championing a society where there is equality, inclusivity, fairness and respect for all. There are many female influencers who inspire me to do this from history to modern times, like prominent suffragette for women's civil rights Sophia Dalip Singh to an 18-year-old climate activist Greta Thunberg. Good role models are so important, and the advice I would give my younger self is to believe in reaching your full potential push yourself out your comfort zone, and achieve against all odds, but with integrity and self-respect. I choose to challenge.
Thank you, Manjit. Fascinating, the importance of role models. And I hope I'm allowed to make this connection as the compare. We may have two role models right now. So the next two to come onto the screen, Anita Bala, who is peering out at me. I'm looking for Kieran Trahan as well, though. There she is. Lovely. I can see both of you. So it says on my script, and it doesn't need to say this, last and by no means least, who could possibly think that? I'm going to introduce a very powerful duo, Professor Kieran Trahan and Anita Bala, who are going to talk about the Leadership Commission and the importance of encouraging women into leadership roles across the region. And I should say an enormous thank you to these two who did take on this role back in 2017 to really start our journey of encouraging women leaders across the region. So I'm not sure who'd like to start. Anita, you were chairing it, so I should probably defer to you. Would you like to tell us the story?
Well, before I go into the Leadership Commission, Andy, I just want to share a story of my own. Years ago, I set up one of the first Asian women's hostels in Leicester, and it was very controversial. In fact, BBC Two made a programme about it because it was the first one outside of London to be set up. And one day, I had the National Front smash my offices, and then Asian men with placards demand that I be sacked for setting up this hostel. That experience, I offended everybody in one go. As a very, very young person, taught me a lot, because sometimes you really have to offend to get to where you want to be, and sometimes you offend many people to get to where you want to be. And I think I got that inspiration and that energy to do what I did on the back of my mum, who brought up 6 children. She was one of the first women to work in the factory floor at Cadbury's and bring up children. So for me, I rest on my mum's shoulders. So when you said to me, hey, there's a challenge here, why in this region do we have so many women, people of colour, LGBT people who are so talented, but we don't see them in positions of power? And when you took up your role as mayor, you wanted to interrogate that. I had no hesitation to say, of course, because I've always chosen to challenge, and there was a challenge you threw to us. I don't know whether Kieran wants to come in, and then we can bounce off each other.
Kieran, please do.
Oh, Kieran, you're on mute.
You are, yeah.
Oh, I think you might have had a window come up to say, give access to your webcam.
Yeah, we've got the camera, Kieran. We've not got the mic. You should need to open it up from that end.
Yeah. Well, while Kieran's
doing that.
Click on
the microphone icon.
Oops. We lost Kieran.
She's nipped off. She's going to come back. So, Anita, I need to just tell us a little bit as well, though, about how you personally have tried to demonstrate leadership as well, and we'll come back to the commission, because I very disrespectfully didn't talk about your leadership roles.
Well, after setting up this hostel, I came to work in Birmingham. One of my first roles in the media was to set up the Asian network. I was challenged. I used to be a presenter, come in the evenings, present at Pebble Mill, but then I was asked if I'd take on a 6-month career break and come up and set up the Asian network. And that was a challenge, because I had no staff, no presenters. I had to start from scratch, and it was exciting, because I literally took young people off the streets of Birmingham, Wolverhampton, Walsall, wherever I could find them, trained them and set up the Asian network, which then became a national service. But then for my own career, I became one of the first bi-media correspondents in news. That was a real challenge, because newsrooms in those days were dominated by men. We had no women who were senior in positions of editors or journalists. And I went in as a bi-media correspondent, and my first week in the newsroom at Pebble Mill, I said to my editor, I can't hack this, actually, I'm leaving, because it was a male-dominated world where men literally sometimes threw typewriters at each other, went off to the pub, and it was so totally alien to me. my editor, who I met only last week, who's retired now, had said to me, if you give up, who's going to make a change here in this newsroom? Because somebody has to. And it was very uncomfortable. I did a lot of gritty work, and you have to work twice as hard in a newsroom. And at that time, the BBC hadn't got its act together where, as far as women were concerned, they started to put in programs to develop people like some of the early news, Angela Rippon and others, and there were schemes put in for women. But even though those schemes were put in and women started to appear in the newsroom and as presenters and editors, there was always the back, and we've heard recently, there was always the dealing that was going on behind the scenes in terms of pay, equal pay. So women were coming into the jobs, but they were not getting equal pay. So it was really, really a tough environment. I'm glad I stuck it out, but I think I've still got some bruises from those days, because you just cannot go into that kind of male environment and not lose a bit of yourself while you do it. And I think one of the women said earlier on, be yourself, don't lose yourself. I felt in that environment, in that male-dominated environment, and also I was the only woman of colour, so it wasn't just, it was a double whammy. I did lose myself a little, because you have to be almost like the men to get on. But over the years, I've learned that that's not the way. I don't have to compromise anymore. The confidence I didn't have then, I've managed to get now. So I'm more confident now than I've ever been.
That is a fascinating story. That was definitely your moment to challenge, wasn't it, to stay and do that. So fascinating. Thank you for sharing. Now then, Kieran, I think, is now on the line. So Kieran, can we hear you?
Great. Can you hear me, Andy?
We can
Andy.
hear you, but we can't see you now. But don't worry, the hearing is far more important, Kieran. So that's
Great,
good. So
thank you.
Why don't you tell your story of just what you do, and then I'm going to ask you and Anita together the story of the Leadership Commission.
Great, thank you, Andy. I've been struck by the powerful stories of of who we are and where we've come from. And so I'm a kid who grew up in the back streets of the East End of London, who was told, don't dream big, you're not going to get an education, don't think about going to university. And I'm the daughter of a first generation migrant. And our backstories are really important, particularly around why we challenge. We've talked a lot about, aspiration and inspiration, but you can't have aspiration and inspiration if it's in short measure and nobody believes in you. So I think for me, what's been really powerful and what's kind of driven me to want to work on the work of the Leadership Commission, has been this, this young child who got an opportunity to go and see Much Ado About Nothing at the Open Theatre in Regent's Park. Kids like me didn't go to see Shakespeare. Kids like me didn't get an opportunity to think about education and careers of choices. And so I think our backstory is really important. And Andy, I was really struck when you told your story about the change that you made in John Lewis. And so the work of the Leadership Commission is so important. It's not just important because it makes good business sense. It's not just important because it's the right thing to do. It's important because we have to challenge perceptions, our own perceptions. We have to challenge our own stereotypical views, and we have to challenge our own unconscious biases. And we talk a lot about visible role models, as if somehow magically these people are going to appear. There are incredible role models right under our noses. But do we see them? Do we hear them? Do we feel them? And so for me, I think my journey was built on curiosity, not of anger or frustration, or why can't I have the same chances as the person next to me, but they were filled with curiosity, challenge. I was a child that, at school, you really didn't want to be asked the question by the teacher. I kind of want to, just for the ground to kind of open up. Nobody would believe that now as I stand here, kind of talking. You never lose that. You never lose that fear of never being quite good enough. You never lose that fear of, have I ever made it? And you talked, Andy, which I think is really important when we talk about community and culture, about humility. We talk a lot about leadership as if, you know, these are big professional roles. But what about invisible leadership? What about leadership in our back streets? Leadership in our communities? COVID-19 has been instrumental to the work of the Leadership Commission. Why? Because what it's taught us, if we're serious about addressing the challenges, you know, if we want more women on boards, if we want more CEOs, if we want more people of colour, then actually we have to put the systems and the infrastructure, but most of all, we have to step up. No one else will do it for us. And so for me, some of those incredible challenges create opportunities. And in thinking about that, what would I say to my younger self? I'd say, find your story, use your story, enact your story. The work of the Leadership Commission is about passion, it's about persistence, it's about persuasiveness. But most of all, it's about never taking the path of least resistance. So I would leave this message about the work of the Leadership Commission. If you get a chance to dance or sit it out, I hope you choose to dance.
Lovely line, lovely. So I'm going to, and there's lots of themes in that, Kieran, that relate to so much we've heard already this evening, actually. So it's beautiful. Anita, do you just want to sort of bring us up to speed with what the Leadership Commission did and then what it's going to do? Because this is very far from a conclusion.
Very importantly, Andy, we brought on people who were new, you know, not the usual people who've sat on committees, people with real life experiences. And we sat for 18 months. We interrogated the data, which Kieran and her university colleagues did for us, because as always, even though there's so much data out there, we still had to prove ourselves that that women are disadvantaged, people of colour are disadvantaged. And again, Kieran has mentioned COVID has highlighted some of those inequalities in a very stark way recently. So we did our groundwork. We presented a report with some recommendations, and our recommendations were not you must do A, B, C. It was, here are the themes. There are some journeys you can pick up here, whoever you are, small business, large business, private or public, and go with them. We didn't expect people to take everything on board. And we challenge you, Andy. We challenge you and the combined authority to say, you've set up this commission, you've got to lead by example. You've got to do some of what we're recommending. One of the first things you did was you said you would not sit on a panel that wasn't inclusive. And you did that within the first few weeks of the sitting, and that set out huge messages. So our recommendations are in place. We know that you and the combined authority have been taking on some of those. Kieran's been doing some fantastic work with some of our businesses. We've got Wesleyan and other big businesses who've come forward, but it's not enough. We have still got huge inequalities. We've still got women who are not making their ways onto the boards. And we know, you know, FTSE's got better, the big companies have got better, 50%, but it's still not there. So we've got a huge challenge. And our next stage is to be task focused. So we're not going to do everything. We're going to use some political power with a small p to encourage people to take up the recommendations, but we're going to get our hands dirty. So one of the first tasks we're going to do is to see how we get more women and people of minority communities, BAME communities, LGBT, onto our boards. Because if you look at private boards, public boards across the country, we are so poorly represented. I've sat on a few boards and I've had some experiences, so I know how difficult they can be. And when you get on those boards, we want people to get on those boards to be ready to take up those positions, but we want them to be supported. It's very easy, and again, from my experience, you sit on a board and it's daunting. You know, everybody around you dismisses you because you're a woman or you're not from the right business or whatever. You have to be mentored and maybe coached so you are succeeding. So we're going to take this very slowly to ensure the people we offer this next training to, and if you take that training by itself, it's worth a lot. We're going to be offering it free with colleagues, people like Jackie Francis and other who will be doing training for us, to say we're going to handhold you and let's try and have a real impact on getting more people who look like us onto boards. Kieran, do you want to just mention some of the business work you're doing?
Thank you, Anita. It's a really exciting time. So for everyone out there who has a challenge, I say take the opportunity. We're launching 2 new initiatives, so watch this space. One is getting people board ready, and that's really important. You have to be at the table to influence and shape the future. So step up is the one thing. And then we're doing an incredible amount of work with our professional services. You know, we've heard today about the impact that role models have. Role models in themselves aren't enough. We need sponsors. And so the work that we are doing with businesses is bringing our professional services together to work on, as a whole, as a collective community. COVID-19 has shown us what happens, not when we work individually, but when, as a region, we come together to fight inequality collectively together. And the business project is really exciting for 3 reasons: because it's evidence-based, it's based on action, and it will make a measurable difference in a short space of time, because it's the voices of those communities who are designing what they need to make it to the next level and to kind of open up some of those things. So, you know, of course it's a challenge, but that's the beauty of challenge, isn't it? That's why we choose to challenge, because through that challenge comes innovation and change. So watch this space over the next couple of weeks as we begin to launch both these new initiatives, but also to share the findings. So I promise you, not more research for research's sake, putting that research to work and building on the evidence. So this time next year, we will have maybe 6 or 12 more people on boards that we didn't have this year.
Thank you both very much, and you've both been you're both mold breakers in your own rights from your own stories, but thank you for what you're doing to help all of our communities be mold breakers as well. And I guess we should do the gesture together, should we not? I choose to challenge. Thank you very much. Lovely. So we've got plenty of time for questions. we're dead on time. So I've got a few on the screen, then I'm going to see if there's any green hands. And actually the first it's not a question, it's an observation. It simply says, Anita, slightly cheekily from Maxine Douglas, you've been an inspiration. You should add to your career, motivational speaker. Thank you very much. And Kieran, you've got the thumbs up as well from Cam Bota to say, yes, we've all got to go for it as a team. So that's great. Now then, question. The first question, I want just to go back to Sam, actually, to say a little bit more about how many women were actually out there in the Afghan compound and what sort of jobs were women doing in the army at the time. So Sam, with you.
So yeah, as I mentioned, I was working in the Role 3 hospital. So a lot of the roles that were being undertaken there were ICU nurses, surgeons, clinicians, physios. Further afield, it was the females, as I mentioned, really representing logistics, HR, the military police as well, a whole spectrum of what you'd see in any industries representing the army out there. So whatever you can think of a female being able to do, they were doing it out there.
Brilliant, thank you. And one for your partner in the forces, Suzanne. What's the biggest challenge you ever had to overcome?
The biggest personal challenge I had to overcome was most probably completing Arctic survival with the Royal Marines in Norway. So that was quite a personal and physical challenge for me, coping with temperatures of -30. But professionally, it was during my tour of Djibouti, when I was the logistics officer for several ships operating out on counter-piracy. And fortunately, in my time out there, the Yemen conflict started, and I was the only British representative in Djibouti, and I was meeting British refugees coming in from Yemen and moving them to a place of safety. And that's the sort of reason why we joined the military, because we're there
helping all around the world and looking after people and protecting our interests. So that was most probably the most mentally and physically challenging. But when you saw people who were coming ashore after being at sea for 6 days, not knowing where they were going to be landed, and just the relief on their face when they were met and they were looked after and moved to a place of safety, is something, as well as being challenging, it was hugely rewarding emotionally.
Wow, yeah, wonderful. It's not often we talk about Yemeni experiences in this room, so that's really taken us, it has stretched us. Thank you. Now then, question for Beverley, and it simply says, what's the most prestigious event that you've ever attended? So I think we're all captured by your own experience. So what's the most prestigious event? I think, Beverley, you may just be on the microphone closed down. Can you open it up? That's it.
Can you
lovely,
hear me now?
Lovely. Yeah, we can now. Yeah, lovely. Most prestigious event.
You know, there's so many. I've been to Buckingham Palace. I've met the Queen. I've met royalties. But one thing, and Suzanne is there, so I have to plug the Royal Navy. I was invited to the Royal Military Tattoo in Edinburgh, and that was, I sat in the royal box, and the way I was treated by the Navy, I think, that has stood out in my mind. And been taken to visit a ship that was being built, I think the Prince of Wales ship, but the whole experience of that weekend, I was really treated like a queen. So yes, that was one of them.
Lovely answer. Thank you, Beverley. Now the next question comes to Julie. Now this is interesting. So your own story, absolutely brilliant. But how have you been able to employ more women in your own business? So take your own headquarters. Do you employ lots of women, and in what roles?
We have women all the way across the business. We've got women that are actually pricing the work. I've got women that go out on site. I haven't been able to get a woman apprentice. Let me tell you, I've tried my best, but I'm still still ongoing challenge. So yes, I've brought them on. I've actually got one of our women in Plymouth is a manager. So I have the most women in the whole of our industry worldwide, because I sit on all the World Association meetings, and there's hardly any women at all.
Thank you. Well, there's a little challenge then to us all, another challenge to be joined. Thank you very much, Julie. Now, the next question, I'm going to ask it to Anita, and it comes, I'm straining my eyes here actually. Right, it comes from Debbie Asinda. It simply says, you've done amazing work. Do you believe in quotas to ensure equality?
Not always. I think quotas are great to push the boat out, but sometimes quotas actually hinder you, because in the early days, because I worked as a community relations officer, there was a time when people would reach their quotas and say, we've done our bit, haven't we? So I think actually sometimes quotas hold the whole progress down, and people start reaching for something that's false, whereas I think it's about good practice. Culture change is so important. You can bring 10 new people into a workforce environment, maybe it's construction, unless the culture is changed, those 10 people are going to have a horrendous time in their career and will walk away. So quotas for me are mixed blessings, and I think we have to be very careful how we use them.
Yeah, okay, very thoughtful, thank you. Now the next question comes from Linda Wolf though, and it says, in your own experience, what would you say makes a good leader, and do you think that women are better suited to lead? Now, you'll all have a view on this. You'll be fighting for this one. But Oyin, I'm going to ask you to have a go at that.
I think women are so dynamic, as in like we're great multifaceted individuals. We're able to reproduce, give birth, and also able to run and manage homes. So why can't we be great leaders, I do think that we need to see a world where we are able to see more women in leadership positions. I'm personally so inspired by the work that someone called Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, who's now the DG of the World Trade Organization, is doing. I'm just like, that's amazing and inspiring. Not just a woman leading an amazing organization like that, a Black woman, an African woman, and a Nigerian woman. So absolutely, you know, women are here to lead and here to stay leading as well.
Brilliant. And then Manjit Kang's asked a question which I'm going to ask Kieran to have a go at, and myself as well. And you'll see why I want to answer this one. It says, could Kieran or Anita or Andy, but we'll have Kieran and myself, give us a success story around inclusive leadership since the Leadership Commission report was published? And I'd like to go first, because I'd actually like to tell the story of the WMCA, because I actually think, and the credit here largely goes to my Chief Executive, Deborah Cadman, who has gave a pledge that we were going to get to 1/3 of our leadership being women in 2019. But we've now moved beyond that, and we're aiming at a fully balanced male-female team. And remember that the biggest part of this organisation is around transport, which in the whole country is just 14% of employees are women, but we are going for balance across the whole organisation. But the most interesting bit, I think, is we've moved decisively to positive action. And sometimes organisations are a bit squeamish about that. Is that the right thing to do? But we have done that in our recruitment and our leadership development policies. And I actually think we are trying to lead by example in that respect, Manjit. I hope that's a decent answer to that question. But I'm next going to turn to Kieran for another example of something constructive.
So there are three things that I would say. One is that we've raised visibility and changed perceptions, and changing perception is really important. And then within our professional services, just in the way that Andy has articulated, we have balanced and created, through the concrete interventions and actions, more people in terms of applying for senior leadership positions and getting them. And the third thing that we've done is created purposeful networks across the region, you know, through our professional service organisations and our educational institutes. So the numbers speak for themselves. What we're not very good at, though, is making our success stories visible. We're very humble about that. And so when we talk about role models, I want to shift our perception. It isn't simply about role models, it's about what those role models represent and do in those kinds of leadership positions. So those are three very concrete things that we've managed to do in a relatively short space of time and against the backdrop of COVID. And I'm really pleased, you know, what we're going to do in terms of getting people board ready so that we now have people in even more senior leadership positions to help change and shift the dial.
Lovely. And then Jenny, you get the penultimate question, because this theme has been there all night. It's about confidence, and you spoke of such adversity in your own story. So I'm just finding it. So how would you go about the process of building confidence for women who are nervous about it in as many sectors are still male dominated? So how do you build inner confidence in women, as you demonstrated so yourself?
Well, I would say that first and foremost, you've got to present yourself well. You've got to dress up smart and look smart. That's the first thing. The second thing is to not be afraid. I think you just got to be able to be very honest in whatever you do. And the third thing is that believe in yourself. Now, if you don't believe in any kind of religion, that's okay. That's okay. But sometimes I think it is comforting to believe in something. And I tell you what it is. I'm not frightened, because when I was leaving Malaysia, I had to go to the head monk of the temple, and he's the one who brought me up. And I went to him for blessing. And he said to me, I have nothing to give you except this betel nut. When things are not working out, and if you feel fear, just have a look at this betel nut and come home. And you know, the fact that you know you can go home. You shouldn't be afraid of anything. And even when I had all those multiple miscarriages and the thought of not being able to be a mother was so devastating, I lost total confidence. I didn't think that my husband would look at me in the same way, you know, a woman who cannot carry a child. But I can assure you that spiritual help is there when you ask for it.
That's very thoughtful. Thank you very much, Jenny. And I've got a green hand up, as they say, from Paul Sabapathy. I said right at the beginning. So, Paul, we're opening your mic. Hopefully, you can open your microphone up. Is it going to work? Can you open it up, Paul? Yes, please, fire away.
Can I hear you?
Yes, we can.
I've just been absolutely astounded. Can you hear me?
We can, loud and clear.
Right. I've been totally astounded by all these wonderful ladies. And if I were still Lord Lieutenant, I could appoint all of them deputy lieutenants, right? And, you know, we are so richly blessed. We're so, you know, really fortunate that we have these wonderful ladies who are doing a fantastic job. And I just think that I just want to give just a bit of advice. In 1964, I worked for IMI, and I was an accountant in Lichfield, and we had the first woman managing director in IMI, a lady called Marion McQuillan. And Marion McQuillan was a world authority on titanium, and but she could not get things done, and the reason was she tried to be more macho than the men. And my advice to any aspiring young woman who's wanting to go far is be yourself, believe in yourself. Your charms, your abilities will shine through. Don't try to match the men. Charm gets you everywhere. A smile gets you everywhere. And so my advice to young people is aim high, reach for the moon, and you'll be among the stars. And what we've got today, Andy, is you brought together some wonderful, wonderful women, which makes me proud to be a Brummie. Thank you.
That's a lovely thing to say, Paul. Thank you very much. Now, I've got more questions, but time is against us. And I just want to read out one last comment because I think it's actually a very special point. You just roll the screen down a little bit, Kirsty. Thank you very much. And it comes from Wasma Case, because I think this is a lovely thing. As a British Afghan who's had the chance to complete my higher and postgraduate education in the UK, I'm the first Afghan origin woman in the UK elected as a councillor. And it's incredible to hear from inspirational speakers. I came to the UK in the mid-90s, and my journey has been incredibly joyful. I'm very lucky and honoured to live in the UK, my first home now, and have these fantastic opportunities. And thank you for stepping forward as a councillor to do that, because there's a lovely symmetry around that, particularly as we were talking about Afghanistan earlier on. So Esma, thank you for sharing that. Now, there are lots of other observations coming in. There's other green hands up, but we should be disciplined around the timing. So I do need, of course, to thank everybody for participating as on the line with your questions. I think that stimulated us. And of course, most importantly, to all of our panelists. And they've all, as Paul said, they've told very distinct stories with all sorts of lessons for us in very their own distinct personalities as well. So I'm eternally grateful. I'm full of admiration. And I think if we could bottle what we've seen in the last hour and a half and use it to inspire young women across the West Midlands, we would be very, very confident of this region's future. So thank you all for your part in what I have to say I've thoroughly enjoyed, and I think it's been a very special event. So thank you all. And I think we are all, and those at home can do the same as well. We can all just join together to give the pledge together. So thank you very much. We've got all the hands up on the screen. I hope you have at home. And of course, I choose to challenge. Thank you all very much and good night. Good night.